Hello and welcome to the Blackout Bushcraft channel. In our last video, I demonstrated the process of setting up a very basic compass course that you can practice your navigation skills on. In part 2 of this series, I talked about shooting back azimuths so that you can return from the point that you came from. Today I want to talk about how you can create a complete reverse course with just the information you've written down for your first course using a similar principle. The key to this is it can all be done on paper and you don't have to shoot a single back azimuth, but the benefit is instead of navigating your course from A to B to C to D, you can navigate your course from D to C to B to A. So it gives you a total reverse course and it can again all be done on paper. Let's go through that right now. All right here is a copy of that first course that I made in the last video. And from that sumac tree where I started here at the corner of the yard, I shot the bearing 197 degrees. That took me out to what we call the cemetery. From there I shot over to the wood line and so forth and went through all of these points. The last point was straight out across the field, but shot me back to the original sumac tree. So to do the reverse course, I'm going to want to go from my starting point to this area. Now, in the second video in this series, we talked about how to take a back azimuth, and we said that anything from 180 degrees below, you add 180 degrees to, and anything from 180 up, you subtract 180. Since 66 is less than 180, we simply add 180 to that 66. So if I go to the original sumac tree and shoot 66 plus 180, which gives me 246, then that will take me to this last point that I navigated from. So now all I have to do is add 180 to this last point. It's going to give me 246 degrees. And I know that it was 105 paces from that point out in the field back to my starting point. So I can just write down that 105 right here. All right. And now we're just going to continue to repeat this process for each of these points. And I just start at the bottom and work my way up. And by doing that, I'll have a reverse course. I've gone ahead and done all the math and written out my reverse compass course. Just to make this as simple as possible, let's start over with what we did in the last video. I went up to a little sumac tree, I call that home, and I staked a tag up there. And from that tag, I moved 197 degree azimuth out at 77 paces to point A. That took me to what we call the cemetery, and I tacked on another tag on a cherry tree. All right, and then I went through that compass course from point A to B to C to D to F. When I got to F, I shot a direct azimuth back home, or to that sumac tree I started at, and that was a 66 degree azimuth. And I traveled 105 paces. That took me home. So to do a reverse course, I simply add 180 degrees to my last azimuth, the one that I shot back home. So from home, I do 180 degree opposite of that, and it'll take me back to point F. Now, from point F, I do a reverse azimuth for that to get to E, which 298 minus 180 gives me 118. I know I traveled 149 paces, so it'll be 149 paces from F back to E. At that point, I went 25 degrees, so 180 plus 25 gives me 205. And I continue to do the appropriate math going from the last point back to the first point. And that gives me a course that goes from the last point back to the first point and then back to home. So again, it's as simple as adding or subtracting 180 degrees on paper from the bottom of your course, from the last point back to the first point, and that gives you your first point on the reverse course back home. I hope that that's not too complicated. It is very simple. It's just to explain it on a camera makes it a little more challenging. But hopefully by looking at the paper, the numbers, it'll all make sense. Opposite of this gives you this. Very simple. All right, so I hope that that did not come across too complicated. In reality, it's very simple. It's just a matter of doing the math of either 180 degrees adding or subtracting, depending on what the number of your original azimuth was. Again, a recap of the second video. If it's 180 or less, you add 180. If it's 180 or more, you subtract 180. Again, 180 can go either way, add or subtract, because it gives you 0 or 360, which is the same point of your compass. Anyhow, the importance of this is, let's say that I've gone on a navigation course whether it's a plotted course like this or whether it's just me navigating through the woods, and I want to backtrack where I came from. This allows me to sit down on a piece of paper and figure out the exact backtrack of everything I've done, and now I can simply follow my bearings and my pace counts that I have written down to take me back to where I started. So it is an important skill to understand. Again, it's simple math. Thank you for your time and your interest. If you have questions, just post them down below, and again, I'll do my very best to answer them. I do definitely have another video in this compass series coming very soon, so I hope you'll stick around. I look forward to talking to you with that one very soon. And until then, take care and God bless.